Cheltenham via Skype by Iona Craig, the former managing editor of the Yemen Times. She's now working as a consultant for the International Crisis Group. Thanks for joining us on this programme. It's not particularly surprising, is it, Iona Craig, that the coalition investigators dismissed 6 of the 8 charges levelled against them by human rights workers and the UN, since they are, in effect, investigating themselves?
Yes, I think this is part of the problem. We've seen similar incidents with the Americans in Afghanistan, but anywhere in the world where you've got a government or even an industry investigating themselves, you can't see those results as being independent. I've actually investigated strikes in the south last year in my work as a journalist. And those strikes were in anti-Houthi territory. I know the Minister of Information was saying there that these kind of strikes can't be independently verified because they're in areas that are pro-Houthi. But I looked into strikes in the anti-Houthi areas, and those were mass civilian casualties with up to 175 people killed in just 8 strikes. So this is happening, unfortunately, on a fairly regular basis. There are many, many incidents beyond those 8 that the Saudis said they have investigated. And this is why I think it really does need an international body that is truly independent to investigate them.
And the coalition, or at least the coalition investigators, also deflect blame for civilian casualties onto the Houthis, saying the Houthis tend to create civilian targets, suggesting they use people as human shields. How much truth is there, do you think, in that?
You know, the Houthis are responsible for killing civilians as well. Again, last year when I was in Aden, there was an incident where a Houthi sniper was in a tall building right in the centre of the city in a residential area. The Saudi-led coalition then took that sniper out, but used a very large 500-pound bomb to do it. Pretty much inevitably, 18 civilians got killed in the process. Yes, it successfully took out the sniper as well, but when you're using very heavy weapons like that, when you're using airstrikes in residential areas, it is inevitable that you're going to have large amounts of civilian casualties as a result. And in Sada, you saw almost systematic bombing of civilian markets, for example. All the markets had been bombed in the city when I was up there and around the edge of the city. Similarly, all of the petrol stations, the gas stations have been hit, which are used by civilians. So I think there are a lot of questions that still, remain unanswered, and there are many more than just 8 strikes that need to be looked at.
Indeed, and if, as you say, in a civil war, civilian casualties are always going to be high, there's always going to be collateral damage. Is it possible, do you think, in your experience, to level a greater sort of proportion of the blame against one side over the other in this case?
I think, you have to look at the figures, even the figures that UN have put out from the human rights, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Their figures of civilian casualties are over 3,600, but more than 2,200 of those have been caused by airstrikes. And of course, the Saudi-led coalition have the heavier weapons on their side. They have the ability to carry out airstrikes. Yes, the Houthis have killed civilians as well. They have been shelling in civilian areas. But when you're using airstrikes, they are a much more deadly weapon than any kind of Grad missile or similar kind of rockets that are used in residential areas.
OK, Iona Craig, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time. Consultant now with the International Crisis Group, joining us live on Skype from Cheltenham. Thank you. Belgian.